Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So this is our final webinar for this year, I believe. And this one I think is going to be especially timely because it's on insights, which is one of our new spatial analysis tools. And it's something that we're very excited to share with everyone. And I say it's timely because insights will actually be out and available later next month. And of course, all of you will have access to it through the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Department of Interior Enterprise License Agreement with Esri. So today's presentation is just an introduction into what Insights really is about. What you're looking at now is a web page that we have set up for Insights, and we can share this link in the chat box as well. This just goes into detail into what some of the key features of Insights are that we'll also explore today, as well as how you can put it to use for various industries within your organizations. So if you have any questions for Doug, please feel free to either type them in the chat box or we'll also have a Q&A at the end. And otherwise, I think I will hand it over to Doug, who can introduce himself, and he will be presenting Insights for you today.
All right, then. Well, thank you for inviting me to show Insights. That's one of my favorite subjects, talking about Insights. Can't talk enough about it. So I love this opportunity. I'm Doug Cochran. I'm the product manager for Insights for ArcGIS. And really, we talk about Insights as spatial analysis re-envision in a sense that everything's all new. The UI, the workflow, the whole entire process of how we access spatially, spatial information is really re-envisioned as far as ArcGIS is concerned. And I'll kind of go through a few slides here, and after that I'll just do a live demo. I think that's really the best way to show or talk about Insights, is to actually demo it. So first, a few slides here. I like to start off with this slide. Data is important, right? Everyone knows that's important, but it's not as important as the answers it can provide, the stories it can tell. Really, Insights is about an exploratory process where you look at your data, your raw data, and you visualize it and you see different patterns, whether it be from a map or a chart or a series of different timelines and things like that. Again, I'll demo that and kind of show you what I mean. But really, what we found is when you're looking at data in its raw format, it's really hard to understand. I mean, you see a bunch of rows and columns and tabular data and things like that. But what really Insights helps with, it really allows you to visualize and kind of see your data in different ways and find patterns. And again, it's really an iterative exploratory process of your data, looking for answers and just kind of looking at patterns. And that's why data is important. Some things that we use to understand your data, you must ask several questions like what factors are affecting profitability? Where are most people in need? Where should I be doing better? Where's your business most exposed? These types of questions, what's common about them is that they all are based on location. So really, questions to answer questions like that, you really do need some kind of spatially located information to kind of get a better picture of what you're looking for. So as I mentioned earlier, Insights is a really modernized application. We made it really simple. I think it's very intuitive. Performance was also very important, so we really optimized performance. We call it at least try to attempt speed of thought processes, where when you're trying to find answers of your data, you really don't want to have to wait and wait for the hourglass to spin around just to get to whatever information you're trying to get at. And of course, that makes you lose concentration. So we really try to optimize performance there, and we made it really drag and drop responsive. So basically, to do any function, you're looking at 3 clicks or less to get that process or that function going. And again, I keep emphasizing how easy it is and how fast, but really the ease of use is something that is at the top level. We try to make it easy for the users to kind of explore their data, but on the back end, we're pretty complex. I mean, we have several data engines that we're digging into to process this, but we're kind of hiding that from the users. So I like to say it's it's a really complex application made simple. And I can't stress that enough, is that really we try to make it very intuitive and easy to use, yet on the back end we have some very powerful data engines working to help you find your answers. So insights, and I'll go through in the demo, but really these are the three main screens that you see here. The one in the back is kind of you start your workbook to access your data. This middle screenshot basically shows the insights interface, and so if you notice on the left-hand side we have this data pane that actually shows your data and the variables, and then the main interface you'll see cards, and those cards are part of pages. And again, I'll kind of go through that concept with my demo. The last screenshot here is what we call our view analysis mode, and that allows you to kind of see how this information was derived, even to the fact that you could say this as a template and be able to reuse it with the rest of your team, and they don't have to actually go through all the steps to get at the end result of the data that you create. They can just look at this view analysis and perhaps update the data or add their own data to that as a template that allows you to basically get up and running right away without even having to go through the different mapping and charting steps that were performed to derive at this data. One thing about analysis, it's very interactive. As I talked about earlier, we can simply drag and drop polygons or data from one card to another. And in this screenshot, basically we're grabbing a city block of, it's actually several city blocks in San Diego, and we're dragging it to on top of some points that has U.S. tapestry data, and we're spatially aggregating it. Again, in other applications, including ArcGIS applications, it may take 4 or 5, even perhaps 10 steps to even derive to this information. We're here, we're just doing a simple drag and drop of your polygon and having that aggregate in a couple steps or less. Also, with spatial analytics, we can actually find answers pretty quickly by simply selecting what we call our action button, which is that little compass looking icon, the lower right there. And what that does is it allows you to look at different types of analytics that you might want to do, like calculate densities, or you can even enrich data with tapestry, or do spatial aggregations, or drive times and buffers, and things like that. Again, it's just a matter of picking that and having that result happen in 3 clicks or less. We can perform a lot of different types of analytic operations in Insights. Up from the spatial analysis side, we can do, of course, spatial filters, densities, find similar aggregations, find nearby, and do joins. Of course, fixed distances and drive times. From the data side, we can filter, we can do field calculations, queries, attribute joins, and create summary tables. In addition to those types of analysis, we also include things like enrichment, such as tapestry or demographics and things like that, and summary statistics. And the results of your analytic operations are basically expressed in cards. So each one of these items here are cards that are visually represented either as a map, or they can be a table, charts, donut charts, tree maps, and things like that. Again, all of your data is linked here, and so as I create new cards, I can actually select each item, and it'll dynamically represent where that information is shown, whether it be in a timeline or on the map. Again, a demo will happen. When we add data to Insights, out the gate with version 1, we're going to support Teradata SAP HANA SQL Server, as well as Excel. And the way you access your information is pretty consistent. So, you basically pick your data, and whether it be an Excel spreadsheet or Oracle database or actually a SQL database, you can just simply select it the same way, and it's very consistent. Insights will work with feature layers. It'll also work with spreadsheets, geodatabases, business databases, as I mentioned, SQL Server, Teradata. And also we will be able to connect into big data and real-time data, big data being part of our geoanalytics story. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with geoanalytics, but basically that allows you to work with big data. Insights will support that as a feature service. Real-time data, which is our geo event, something new coming out in 10.5 Enterprise. And again, Insights will work with that through feature services to allow you to look at spatial temporal information. So enough of that, slides that is. Let me go into a demo real quick and show you Insights in action. Let me just escape out of this. And I'll bring this over. I'll go screen. Can everyone see my Insights interface there?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. So this is the main Insights UI. It basically works in a web browser, so I'm using Chrome in this case. But the first interface that you see, or I should say UI, is this screen right here. We can actually open workbooks that we've already created, or we can start a new workbook. In this case, I'm going to start a new workbook here. And as I showed in my slides, I can actually look at data from my content or from my entire organization. Here, of course, we have a lot more data because it's been shared with our organizational group here. I can also go to my Excel pane here, and I can either drag and drop an Excel file directly onto the screen, or I can browse to my computer and bring an Excel spreadsheet that way. Also, when we connect into new databases, unfortunately we don't have any connections here, but administrator can set up a database connection, and I can just basically select this from my data pane and be able to access that information right now. Currently, I don't have any, only because this is a new build that was just installed last week, so please bear with me there. In this case, I'm going to go to my content. I'm going to bring in some data. I can bring in multiple types of data if I want at one time. In this case, I'm going to use my favorite San Francisco accident data set. In this case, we're going to look at San Francisco accidents only. So I'm just going to select that, and I'm going to add. And now we're going into the main interface for Insights and its workbooks. And so here you'll see we have our data information on the left-hand side, and so these are different variables or items that I can bring in, simply drag and drop in to get information. In addition to that, things like, well, if I want to call this workbook something, I just basically click that, and I'll just call this San Francisco Accidents. And again, I can even rename my cards to anything I want. I'll just say SF map. And basically, if you can see it or touch it, you can do it. So really, I'm just saying, well, I need to change that, and I just click it, and it happens. Here's a map representation of that data set, and these are basically points showing accidents that occurred throughout San Francisco from the last 12 years or so. I can visualize this a little bit differently by just simply selecting this button here, and in this case, it might be better represented looking at it as a heat map. And so when I select that, it should show a heat map, and this is running a little slow here. Hold on, let me just, I would change, I had an issue with internet connectivity earlier today, so hopefully that's not affecting it. Can you hear me okay over there?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my audio is not breaking up or anything, correct?
No.
Okay, let me just do that again. I did have some connectivity issues earlier today. In fact, well, you know what? I won't show I'll actually let the heat map go, but I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop another map while that's happening. I'm not sure what's happening on the heat map, but I can tell by just looking at this flyout that the heat map's not showing an icon. So perhaps there's something, some new bug introduced in this build that I have. In any case, I can continue on, and I'll just I'll use this map. So these are certain points of different types of accidents, and as I select around, you can see that it's basically showing collisions, and in this case, it's just showing collision types, and I can actually drill down into that more by looking at different types of data. So in this case, I'm going to bring a date timeline in, and I'm going to create a chart this time with that. And it looks like I'm having some issues here. You know what? I'm going to go to another server, and hopefully that will work better. It's an older build, but let's see if this works better. Yes, that looks better. If you notice, we have a heat map, actual icon showing there. There we go. So voila. It's like the old Julia Child cookbook, right? I mean, I have something in the other. I can switch real quick, but this is actually still live. It's just a different server. So yeah, so in this case, I did a heat map. If you notice, visually, it's much more understandable because we notice in the northeastern kind of quadrant, of San Francisco area, we do see a high concentration of accidents there. And again, as I select around, if I had other cards created, we would actually see that update. So in this case, I'm going to go back to date and time. I'm going to create a chart here, and that worked great. So if you notice along this, in fact, I'm going to change these to the points. It's probably easier readable when we use points here. But as I select along this timeline here, you'll notice that accidents update and kind of show where those accidents occurred during that time frame. So in this case, we're looking at 11 accidents that happened in 2008, from 4 to 5, 2008, April to May. And as I select there, we see an interactivity between the chart and the state of the map. I can actually drill down more into this information, and let's look at something like severity, for example. Again, I'm just simply grabbing that field, and I'm dragging and dropping. In this case, I can create a chart from that. And as I do that, I can also easily flip between different types of visualizations. In this case, I could go to a map, and this will show me the different types of severity in the area. Or I can do, let's say, a donut chart. And a lot of the accidents people weren't severely injured or killed. So in this case, thank goodness most of the data doesn't have any data because it wasn't severe or fatal. But I can filter that out by just simply going into this filter button. And let's say I want to remove the no data piece just to make it visually more understandable, or at least see the proportions of people that were severely injured versus killed. And we can see from this information that as I select this severely injured chart, you can see the timeline update as well as the map. Same with killed. I can select that, and we can actually see where the fatalities were along the timeline here. In this case, there were 7 in the month of September 2005. And just hovering over my data points here, we can see that we get more information. 9 in July of 2010, etc. I can go through and drill down more into this data. Let's see, why don't we look at a collision type. That's kind of an interesting statistic there. And so again, I just look on my my data pane here, and I can just basically drag any one of these variables and get information on that. In this case, I'm going to look at collision type and see what that data implies. Let's see, collision time, date, year. I'm sorry, just bear with me as I find that field. Here, there it is. And again, we do see a skewed no data, so I'm going to filter that just to make it more readable here, and just kind of take out none and no data. I'm going to apply that. Oops, wait, let me edit that. There we go. And again, as I look at my information here, we can see that side swipes are the #1 type of accidents that happen. Rear-to-rear is kind of an interesting takeaway on that, and what really helped me here is as I selected that, you'll notice on the map that you'll see a few points here. But rear-to-rear is basically when you're backing out, perhaps let's say in a parking lot, and you hit another car, both cars are backing out at the same time, and both of those collisions will happen rear-to-rear. But looking at this map, I'm not sure how familiar people are with San Francisco, but most of these accidents are happening in Union Square, which is a huge shopping district. And so that kind of makes sense that, okay, you'll see quite a bit of rear-to-rear accidents in shopping areas where there's a lot of parking and things like that. Again, I'm just kind of browsing my data as I go through and just kind of getting some takeaways on this information just by simply dragging and dropping. Some things, when you're looking at tabular data especially, you can't really visualize what's happening. But as I go through this information, I can simply look at patterns and find discoveries. In this case, I discovered that that side swiping is the #1 collision type that's happening. Rear-to-rears typically happen in shopping centers. Rear ends and head-ons and so forth are also reflected in this data. Again, I'm just kind of just browsing through Insights and looking at the data that I have and just finding answers or looking at patterns from this. One interesting takeaway that I do is I'll do something like, well, victim sex, male or female. So if I create a chart here, I can go to this and I can maybe I want to visually change that type to, let's do a donut. In this case, this data is raw, so I'm just going to filter out the no data again. But the takeaway here is basically you'll see that it's true that men actually do have more accidents than women. And I don't know if anyone's seen the discount double check Liberty Mutual commercial, but you know, the wife got this discount check for being a safe driver, and the husband couldn't believe it. But actually, looking at this real data here, we see that that men do in fact get into more accidents than women. So that's a an interesting takeaway again. And as I go through this, I can flip through this information, simply go, let's say, from a bar chart to another type of visualization, let's say a tree map. I haven't used that one yet, but as we hover over this data, we can actually see the number of accidents that occurred by males or female. And even on the map, I can actually look and see the type of accidents that occurred between male and female, and it looks like it's pretty evenly dispersed out there. So there's not much takeaway there. Perhaps a heat map can make it more understandable. But it looks like that same northeast quadrant, whether it's male or female, it seems to occur in that northeast area, which is actually a heavy tourism area, Fisherman's Wharf and such. So that makes sense there. What else can I do? Well, you know what? So I think what's important is that once you have this information and you want to share it, we actually have a pretty good sharing story that lets you distribute this amongst your team members, or let's say perhaps an exec where you maybe only want them to have kind of a read-only interrogation mode view of this. I can show you both ways, but before I get into that, let me show you this view analysis mode. So as I create these charts and things, you can see kind of the trail that I did to derive at this information or these answers in these cards, for example. I can go here and delete a few things. You can see that I did an aggregation here, etc. In addition to that, if I want to, I can update my data by simply selecting this pane here and either updating that same San Francisco accident data. Let's say that might be a snapshot in time or more recent, that I can just simply update and not have to go through the process of creating those visualized cards that I did and filtering and things like that. Or I can actually insert, let's say, data from New York accidents and be able to derive the same visualizations that I did with the San Francisco data without having to recreate all the cards and everything else. Again, I think that's pretty powerful because, as I talked about, complexity made simple is that in the background we're really tracking all these types of things. So should you need to share or show people how you derived this info, it's automatically doing that in the background for you. That's saving a lot of time. The sharing piece here is pretty simple too. So if you notice, I have multiple pages. Again, if I want to change this page, I can call it anything I want just by selecting it. Let's say SF page 1. And I can also share this page by simply selecting this caret button here, this down kind of arrow thing. In this case, we can share, we can print it, we can share it as a model, we can also even simply create a JPEG or raster image of this as well. In this case, I'm going to share this. I want to distribute it, let's say, to some of my team members. Let's say an exec as a read-only kind of thing where they can interrogate this information but not necessarily edit or change it. So what I'll do here is I'll just simply hit share. I won't add descriptions or things like that. I'll just show you quickly how that works. So if you notice here, I can use this shared as an iframe. So something like this I can embed into a web page or story map, for example. I can just simply copy and paste that. I can access this page item by just hitting go here, and I can view this shared page. So in this case, I'm going to view it, and it's going to go into what we call a read-only mode. And what that does is, if you notice on the left-hand side, there's no data pane there, but the information that I created is here, and I can go through and I can interrogate this information, look at the timeline and see that, where these accidents occurred during that time frame. I can actually select, all my charts, and again, they're dynamic or interactive. So as I select sideswipe, for example, we can see where those accidents occurred, as well as the rear-to-rear accidents, as we talked about earlier, where the fatalities were along the timeline, etc. One takeaway with this data, we actually got this data from the city of San Francisco, is that we noticed a pretty sharp decline in accidents in 2011 or so, where it was peaking in 2009. But what they did is they implemented more traffic lights and pedestrian walkways in kind of that northeastern quadrant. So as you go through the timeline here, you'll see that the the reduction in traffic helped, especially in the northeast quadrant of San Francisco, really helped with the implementation of more street lights and traffic lights. And so as I select through this data, you'll see that there have been very few accidents after 2011, especially in that northeast quadrant area. So when we brought this to the attention of the city, they basically said, yes, exactly, we implemented more traffic lights. And they weren't really able to visualize or show their exact kind of that change. They could on paper see that there was a reduction, but here we were able to actually show more meaningful data that actually indicated that yes, the mitigation that they did with more traffic lights and pedestrian walkways actually helped reduce traffic significantly after 2011. So again, it was a great takeaway for them to actually use some of Insight's capabilities to visualize kind of the reduction in traffic and accidents due to that. With that, let me just go back to my PowerPoint. Yeah, I only have a few more slides here. It's really in summary what I wanted to show you. I really showed you Insights kind of at the high level. There's so much more power and capability behind that you just definitely have to get your hands on it and understand all the things that you can do with it. But really, it's about exploratory and spatial analysis. It's also a core capability of ArcGIS. So we work with the platform that includes GeoAnalytics, which is part of 10.5 Enterprise, as well as GeoEvent. We focus on GIS, so a lot of people talk about Insights versus Tableau or some other business intelligence tool. Really, our focus with Insights is a very simple UI that's very powerful in the back end, but it lets you focus on GIS and going beyond just basic mapping like some of the BI tools. Really, our strength is in ArcGIS and the spatial analysis tools that we can provide as a result of that. So with Insights, you start asking questions, you find your answers, you can document that workflow, and then, of course, you can share and tell your stories. And that's really what Insights is about in a nutshell. Some of the timelines for Insights is that we still haven't released yet. We're actually planning on releasing with the ArcGIS Enterprise 10.5 in December. So that's next month up and coming. And currently we're in Insights pre-release, but we are also looking at updates every 4 weeks to 6 weeks, at least initially. And one of our first updates will happen in January. We're looking at supporting Oracle directly and bug fixes and other enhancements. One of the big milestones that we're looking at in June or around the UC timeframe is an online version of Insights. Right now, Insights runs on top of ArcGIS Enterprise 10.5, but we are also looking at having an ArcGIS online version in June sometime as well. And with that, I'm done. Any questions?
I believe we do have some questions. Some of them you might not be able to answer. So some folks are asking if Insights will be available under the Department of Interior ELA. Yes, it will be. It's going to be part of the ArcGIS 10.5 release coming out later this year.
Correct.
And maybe on that subject, Doug, do you want to talk a little bit about the requirements for installing Insights, at least in the initial phase?
Yes, so to install Insights actually is a separate installer, but it's part of ArcGIS 10.5, so you'll need to stand up your ArcGIS 10.5 server and portal first, and then you just run the Insights installer on top of that. I do want to stress that, for performance reasons, it really depends on how many users you plan on having connected to it, as well as your data stores, but we recommend at least 4 cores for 10 users, actually 4 to 6 cores for 10 users, up to 10 users, and definitely an SSD drive for your data store, and probably 32 gigabytes of memory. That usually seems to work as a general rule of thumb. Then you would scale up from there. But basically, again, stand up ArcGIS 10.5 Enterprise and install Insights on top of that. We are looking at a managed service that's going to be coming from professional services. And they're kind of currently putting together a package that will either A, help you jumpstart your installation on-prem, or they can have create an AWS instance for you that allows you to get up and running Insights quickly right away without having to stand up your own 10.5 enterprise server and portal.
Okay, thank you. Someone else is asking, on the database connection in Insights, does it use the same database connection as an ARC catalog?
I believe so. I'm not 100% sure on that, but yes, we should be able to connect into that as well, a data connection into that. In fact,
Okay.
now that I'm using a different build here, this one should have additional database connections. I just wanted to see if there's an ARC catalog in here, but yeah, we have Teradata SQL Server, SAP HANA. If I were to add a new connection, yeah, it looks like in this case we're only supporting these items right now: SAP HANA, SQL Server, Teradata, and then in January Oracle. So I'm not sure if that answered the question into connecting into our catalog, but I'd have to probably check into that and follow up with the person that asked that question.
Okay, and I believe that was Grant.
Okay.
So we can follow up later. Someone else asking, do enterprise geodatabase domains carry into Insights?
Yes, they do. Yes, you can connect into your geodatabases either through your portal, or using, let's say, an application like Desktop, and then creating a feature service for that, or feature layer. And that's the way Insights version 1 will support it. In the future, we are going to enable direct connectivity into GeoAnalytics, and later on GeoEvents. So, but right now, as we talked about, Insights, it's a system of insights, and we're allowing connectivity either through a hosted feature service or direct connection with SQL Server, SAP HANA, and Teradata, and Oracle eventually.
Another question, are data layers published to server then able to be accessed from Insights, or do you have to publish from server to Insights? Someone asks.
Oh yeah, no, you can publish and server, and your portal will have your data layers there, and that can come into, you can bring that into Insights.
Sorry, just a clarification. Doug, can you explain? So Insights is actually, it's working with Portal and the data that's in Portal? This is Ann, by the way.
Hi, Ann. Yes, it's actually working with the data in Portal. You basically can share your data in Portal either with your organization or just keep it as your content. And Insights will be able to access that information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So in this case, I don't have anything in my content, but I do have shared items in my portal. So through the accent data set, for example. But all this information is in our portal. So we just basically, Insights will pick it up and allow you to access that information as long as it's shared through your organization or you have it as part of your content. In addition to that, we also include standard geographies. And so I didn't show that, but if you can see my screen here, I can go through and select the boundaries that our portal admin has set up for us to access. And again, Insights will read that information, and if it's available, it'll display it.
So just a few more questions before we wrap it up. So again, going back to geodatabases, someone asks, how does Insights interact with ArcSBE and version-based databases?
So, again, Insights will be able to access any database as a hosted feature service or a feature layer. So you would have to convert that information to that, and we'll be able to bring that feature layer or service within Insights. We don't necessarily have a direct connectivity into that without, creating a hosted feature layer of it. Direct connection right now, again, is SAP HANA, Teradata, and SQL Server at this point. But we'll be able to bring in any geodatabase via hosted feature services.
And then a couple of folks are asking if Insights is a separate software that can be downloaded separately from the rest of our ArcGIS products, and whether 10.5 is required to install it.
Yeah, so 10.5 is required to install it. So you can, Insights does have its installer, but it will not install anything but 10.5. You can't, in other words, you can't run it as a desktop application or standalone in any way. You definitely need 10.5 to work Insights.
Okay, excellent.
So it installs on Portal server.
So I'm not seeing any other questions, at least from the chat window. But if anyone has any further questions for Doug or for Ann or I, we'll send our contact info, if you don't have it, in the follow-up email to the webinar. And again, feel free to ask Doug any follow-up questions as well. Doug, do you want to talk a little bit about Insights testing between now and December, middle of December?
Yeah, so yeah, we do have a small window, I guess, of opportunity to test Insights, or I like to say just evaluate it, because we're basically in pre-release already. Actually, we're actually in a release candidate right now. But if people are interested in looking at it, you know, by the mid of December, if you can just have them reach out to me. We do have an AWS instance that has the latest builds on there that allows you to kind of look at Insights and play with it somewhat without having to stand up 10.5 yourself. And so if people are interested in that, I can probably, actually I can provide them access, but keep in mind that it'll only be short-lived. It might only be until the mid of December, probably the end of December, before we have to disable it. So John, if you can just kind of help gather people that are interested in looking at it, I can definitely provide access.
I think we're going to wrap this webinar up. Thank you, Doug, for a very exciting presentation. And thanks everyone for tuning in, and hope to see you in the new year.